What happens if the moon crashes into the Earth? What if, all of a sudden, the moon started to orbit the Earth more closely until it crashes into our planet? If that happened, what impact would it have on Earth? If you want answers to all these questions, you should watch this video all the way through. This video will discuss a topic that is often on our minds. If the moon were to crash into Earth, what would happen to it and us? A realistic answer is that the moon would eventually break apart under Earth's weight. From our viewpoint on planet Earth, what would we see? The scenario would play out something like out of a science fiction film, but if the moon collides with Earth, none of us will likely survive to find out what happens next. I suppose I should begin by giving you some information on our moon. As the sole natural satellite in our solar system, the moon is unique to Earth. Furthermore, it's the only other giant planet where humans have set foot. The moon, it is speculated by the American Museum of Natural History, was created some 4.5 billion years ago when Earth collided with another Mars-sized planet called Theia. Space debris from the crash eventually gathered on our moon. So, what exactly does the moon do for our planet? This planet is profoundly affected by the moon. Tides are regulated, the climate is maintained, and the Earth becomes a more habitable place thanks to the moon. Some researchers even argue that other planets must have moons like ours to host complex life. It's not just the birds who utilize the moon for navigation when they fly south for the winter. Even though researchers have yet to determine why corals spawn only once a year, they have determined that this annual event occurs on the night of a full moon. Is it possible that the moon affects your mood as well? The scientific evidence regarding the moon's effect on people is, as of this writing, inconclusive. On full moon nights, participants in a 2013 study took 5 extra minutes to fall asleep and spend very little time in a deeper sleep. What will happen to the moon in the future? Forbes says that in some 65 billion years from now, the moon could reverse its orbit and speed up its approach to Earth. The reason for this is that the Earth's orbit will eventually slow down until it's the same length as the moon's orbit. This will bring the moon closer to the Earth over time. Let's imagine that this begins to occur considerably sooner, like in a few years. For reasons that science cannot explain at the time, perhaps unseen forces such as aliens exert pressure on the moon. What will happen on Earth while the moon moves closer to it? The moon will get closer and closer to Earth, and as a result, gigantic tides will begin to engulf coastal cities like Tokyo, New York, London, and Mumbai. If the distance between the Earth and the moon were cut in half, the tides here would become 8 times stronger than they normally are, and this would happen only once. The closer the moon is, the more terrifying things get. When the moon is around 1,341 miles away from us, it would cover up half the sky, and tides that were miles high would rise around the Earth several times a day, killing everything in their course and then sending the rubble inland again and again. This would occur many times a day. The situation would be made even worse by the fact it would repeat itself every 90 minutes due to the much faster orbit that a moon at that range would have around Earth. So, will the world end? If that doesn't sound bad enough, keep in mind that there will also be enormous earthquakes, volcanic reactions, and a rise in the temperature of the planet's core because of the proximity of the moon. If that doesn't sound terrible enough, keep in mind that there will also be a rise in the core temperature of the planet. If all the hot lava ended up being discharged into the oceans, we might observe the water simply boiling away. But even if you did manage to avoid being destroyed in this post-apocalyptic catastrophe, the moon might not have. Will the moon explode too? When the moon traveled a distance of 11,470 miles above the surface of our planet, it would have arrived at the Roche limit. At this time, the tides on Earth would be approximately 9 kilometers high, which means that there wouldn't be much of a chance for life as we know it to survive in coastal locations. As the moon approached Earth, it would have had an effect on Earth's rotation, which would have resulted in shorter days and temperature changes. This would have increased the likelihood of a new ice age occurring in the long run. Once the moon reaches the Roche limit, it will essentially be game over for human exploration of the moon. At this limit, the tidal forces are more powerful than the gravitational pull, which indicates that there are a greater number of forces acting to rip the moon apart than there are to keep it together. Shortly, the moon will fracture into bits, and sooner after that, these bits will form a magnificent ring around Earth, quite similar to the rings that orbit Saturn. This ring will last for at least some time. However, the ring won't be around forever. Pieces of the moon will soon start dropping on the Earth's surface, which will destroy cities, the creation of enormous craters, and the potential extinction of all life on Earth. While there is a relatively low risk that the entire moon will crash into the Earth, there is a risk that parts of the moon will. Is it possible for the moon to collide with the Earth? The good news is that the moon is receding from Earth at a pace of 3.8 centimeters, 1.5 inches every year as a result of its rotation. Since the freezing and thawing of glaciers affect the tides that exert gravitational pressure on the moon, this pace has increased during periods when the climate on Earth has altered. The moon moved away from Earth at a rate of 2.75 inches per year during those momentous periods when the continents changed and the elements for life evolved. As unproductive as it may seem at the moment, all this floating will add up in the end. Assuming the moon survives the red giant phase of the sun, futurism predicts that in 50 billion years, the moon's orbit will expand from a little over 27 days to 47 days. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, PDCO, is always looking up to see if there are any signs of a threat, but so far, they haven't found anything. Will an asteroid hitting the moon make it drift toward Earth? The moon is unlikely to be hit by something large enough from another planet to alter its orbit. To begin with, the moon has a rather rapid orbit, which means that the strength of its orbit is sufficient to bounce off anything that tries to throw it off track. Instead, the asteroid would have little effect other than to add more craters to the moon's surface. The dwarf planet Ceres, the largest known asteroid at 587.82 miles in diameter, could not possibly hurl the moon in Earth's direction. But things can change if something of comparable size and velocity to the moon crashed against it. There were two possible outcomes. The moon exploding is a much more plausible scenario. The other effect is a shift in the moon's orbit, possibly in the direction closer to Earth. That being said, it's quite impossible. In the distant future, when Earth is likely no longer capable of supporting life, the moon may come into collision with the planet. For the time being, all you need to do is appreciate the moon for what it is. A stunning sight in the night sky, a source of light for Earth in the nights, an important factor in maintaining the temperature on Earth, and a location that people have traveled to and even played golf on. It's an orb that we count the seasons by, telling ourselves it is made of cheese, and say good night to at night. You are safe from the moon's influence. To restate, the moon cannot inflict any harm upon you. Okay, curious people, today's video ends here. I'll be back with great content soon, so subscribe to the channel. If you want to talk about any other theory, then let me know in the comments section below. But before that, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel.